Hey everybody, it is a gloomy Wednesday afternoon today here in Michigan. So what better than to sit back, relax, and talk about this big old stack of books. All these books are books that I greatly enjoy and definitely recommend depending on, the kind of person you are and what your interests are. So without further ado, let's get into it, starting with The Sailor on the Seas of Fate by Michael Moorcock. This is an older, it's from the 70s, story of Elric of Melniboné. And it is a fantasy novel, quite weird, a little bit psychedelic and like dreamy. I don't know where I heard of it. This is a pretty well-known series, but even still, I don't know where I found out about it. Probably through some art Twitter accounts or something that have posted this artist's work, because Elric is a very popular artist to depict, So I probably found out about it from something like that. And so I bought these small, like really old yellowed paperbacks off of like thrift books, I think. And they're pretty cheap to get, so I have a couple of these and I've read a few of them, and they're really interesting. It's kind of like an episodic thing. Like there is somewhat of an overarching story. The first book is like the origin of everything, but after that, Elric's just kind of like off on his own, like doing whatever. This is the second one chronologically, if I'm not mistaken. And so this one, he gets like pulled into some dream dimension, but essentially. You might hear my cats fighting. Let me get my cats, actually. I'll bring Honey in here. Honey cat. Sometimes I gotta save Honey cat from Yuki. Okay. Oh, stop, baby. Here, I'll put you down. Okay. Where was I? I have no idea. Don't try and do any big jumps. Okay. So you might hear Yugi making some noise. So he's in a dream dimension of some kind, which is the titular Seas of Fate. He's been asked to help out on this quest, which a bunch of other champions, which is kind of this like running idea with Moorcock, is this idea of the eternal champion. So it's like reincarnations of this like powerful hero essentially. And so Elric is one of them, and he meets several others on this journey, and they do a bunch of different stuff. It's split into 3 parts. The first part is sailing, I think it's like sailing the seas of the past. Let me see. I know it's like past, present, and sailing to the future is first, followed by, I'm not going to find it because it's somewhere in the middle, but sailing to the present and then sailing to the past. And so each part has a very unique idea, and it's executed pretty well. The writing style is, it's pulpy, it's descriptive, and it kind of flows nicely. I wouldn't say it's necessarily anything like incredibly special, but it does have some really cool ideas and stuff. It's very philosophical. Elric is kind of like portrayed as this intellectual who used to rule over his society that is like kind of crumbling, and so he's trying to like intellectualize and kind of reflect on the values his society holds, the culture of his civilization, and so to seek out like something to restore his civilization is why he left. And like abdicated the throne to his cousin, who's not like a good dude or anything. But this is a great little read. I'm really interested to read more of them. I know there's like several other books to read in the Elric series, and I know Moorcock has like tons of other characters and other stories and stuff. So there's a lot to dig into here, but I really enjoyed this book. If you want to get into fantasy, I think this is a pretty good place to start, other than like, the typical like Lord of the Rings recommendation, which is also a good place to start, of course. But This is a bit lighter than that. It's like, it's only it's like under 200 pages. It's not super dry. It's kind of just like a fun, but also kind of thinky book to read. So yeah, recommend The Sailor on the Seas of Fate, as well as other Elric novels. Next up, going from fantasy to sci-fi with the first 2 books in the Hyperion series, the Hyperion Cantos, I believe. There's 4 books in this series. I've only read the first 2. But these are, absolutely incredible sci-fi epics. Very dense, very, very kind of hard to get through. Not get through, sorry, but to like get into. If like a lot of details and a lot of characters kind of push you away from things. I got these in middle school or high school, these exact copies, because my friend Alex talked to me about it, and then I mentioned it like in passing to my mom, and then I got them for my birthday. So all 4 of these in like mass market paperbacks. And I tried to read it in late middle school, early high school, and I read the first, not even maybe the whole first chapter. And just like couldn't get in, just could not, like, I was interested by it, but I just like couldn't continue with it. And then like through the years, I've tried to start and read it so many times. And I think last year is when I successfully started and finished the first book in the series. And I was absolutely floored. This is an incredible, incredible story. This is kind of like a prequel in a sense, I guess. Basically the synopsis is that there's this mythical creature known as the Shrike. And the Shrike is kind of like a wish granter, really all-powerful, controls time and space. It's kind of like unknown why it does what it does and how it does what it does, but it does. And so every once in a while there's these pilgrimages to the Shrike to answer some... Honey Cats, be bad, 1 second. Honey Cat, I'm gonna kick you out of the room now. You're scratching things up. Get out from behind the record player, baby. Baby, now you're stuck. Oh, come here. Oh my goodness. Why are you being bad? You're the good cat. You're the good cat. Be good. Go fight your brother. You're right here. Be good, kids. Q, you attacking her? Maybe not. Okay. Anyways, back to what I was saying. Sorry for interruptions, folks. Being the father of 2 playful cats is hard work. Anyways, it is told in 7 parts as the 7 members of, or actually I think it's 6 parts because, yeah. In 6 parts as the 7 members of the pilgrimage each tell their story, their reason for coming to the Shrike to wish for everything. And I don't want to say more than that because there's first off, there's too much, and so like it would kind of be like anything I would say is kind of not enough. And I also don't want to spoil anything because each story is like very, very cool. Has a very awesome premise, really cool character building and world building through each story, and things kind of just connect and converge into the last story, where kind of a big bombshell is dropped, and it leads into the next novel, which is told in a very different way, more of a straightforward narrative as opposed to like characters telling their stories and then having a little bit of forward progression in the narrative, another character telling the story, a little more forward progression, so on and so forth till they get to the end of the novel. This is more of a straightforward one, and it jumps between perspectives. It introduces straight off the bat a new character as a first-person perspective. I don't want to say anything about this because there's just so much, and it's so good. I don't want to spoil it because I think that it's more important that I don't spoil this than spoiling this. But basically, this is just like everything from the first book. This takes and like it just multiplies exponentially in terms of like the tension and the stakes, really. So can't say enough good stuff about this series. I kind of am kicking myself for not continuing it immediately in the third and fourth book, but I felt like I needed kind of a break to decompress. And so I think that once I finish The Way of Kings in like a month or two, this will be where I go next in my fiction reading. So yeah, I think this is for like intermediate to advanced level sci-fi or fantasy readers. I wouldn't recommend starting here, and I definitely shouldn't have tried to start here, but I didn't really know what I was getting into. And even as someone who reads a lot of sci-fi and fantasy, it was a lot to take in the first time reading it last year. But I feel like more than a lot of other books, it kind of like made me a better reader, if that makes any sense. Like I feel like I, through this book, learned to like really better analyze characters and like understand things a bit better thematically and all that kind of stuff. So these books are very meaningful to me, and I'm really excited to see where the series goes. All right, next up, this is a big one. This is The Stand by Stephen King. This is an absolute behemoth. It's about 1,100 something pages. This is the extended version, I should mention, because the original paperback version has like 800 something, and I don't know when they released this extended version, but like not like, I think in the 90s or something. And this is a rather new edition. But this is like, yeah, they added like a couple hundred pages. But this is a great novel. It's not the place to start with King. My history with King is long and arduous, and mostly filled with good memories, but definitely arduous in terms of like all the craziness that goes on in his work. So I would say that, I don't know how old I was when I read Misery, which was my first Stephen King novel. Probably like 11 or 12. Definitely too young to be reading that, because there's a lot of fucked up things that happen. But after that, I was like, he was kind of who I hooked onto, and so I'd go to the library and I'd check out Carrie or Pet Sematary or Salem's Lot, which is another great book. And then, of course, The Shining, Christine, I've read as well. And yeah, so I've never read The Stand, which is his longest work as far as I'm aware. Just barely beating out It, which I also have not read. But yeah, oh my gosh, this is one of my favorites for sure. It's a little bit on the nose with how things have been going lately, but it's about a super flu that wipes out 99% of the population, and then the survivors kind of like are torn between two polar opposites of morality. There's the good and the evil, as is portrayed. Christianity is very prominent, even though I think King is pretty regularly. You can tell he's not very religious or anything, but it's used as a motif throughout the novel to like kind of, I don't know, just like drawing different perspectives, I guess, on morality and stuff like that. But it's a very, very in-depth novel. The first like 400 pages are like the first few weeks of the outbreak, as you like meet the main characters, which there are a lot of. You see what goes on in their normal lives as slowly things start to build. Then once shit hits the fan, there's a couple hundred pages of them like just getting all together into one community. And then there's like more work about how they should structure their society. They're basically building society from the ground up. So they're like, having meetings about things. They're talking about political ideas that they want to incorporate, how they want to like police their society, how they want to run their government, that kind of thing. And so that's like a pretty unique thing. And then of course there's always the looming threat of the Dark Man Randall Flagg, who is like as I said, like the polar opposite of this like society that's headed by Mother Abigail. And so things kind of come to a head with certain characters, and then the confrontation happens at the end of the book, and it's awesome. If I had to say one negative thing, it is the length. There are parts that kind of drag on. The character work is excellent, so that'll keep you hooked, because all the characters are really, really well explored, and they feel very real, and not necessarily real as in realistic, but they feel like they're consistent. They're logical in the sense that how they're written stays like like a real person would act. Like it's I'm not explaining this very well, but what I'm trying to say is that the characters are kind of the bedrock of this whole story, and the plot is, the plot is kind of, to me, it's very loose. There's some beats here and there about, it really ramps up toward the end, of course, but there's some beats about, kind of spread out, I would say. But yeah, this is definitely an excellent novel. Again, I would not start here with King. I would definitely start with something early on in his career. Carrie is great. The Shining is also excellent. It's different than the movie, so if you've seen the movie, it's not what you would be expecting totally. Different endings and such, but yeah. After you've read a couple King books, I think you could definitely sink your teeth into that, and it would be pretty awesome. So, okay, next up, let's go to some nonfiction, shall we? This is The Shock Doctrine by Naomi Klein. This is a political nonfiction book about, it's very, very thorough. It's like years and years of firsthand research and like, on the ground, being on the ground in Iraq and stuff like that. But basically it details the history of shock therapy, and which is like in the psychological or the psychiatric sense, using shock therapy, electroshock therapy, for like mentally ill people or torturing people. They talk about that as well at the very beginning, and then she ties that into how people of like the free market capitalist ideology, like Milton Friedman specifically is someone brought up a lot, how that sort of shock therapy kind of influenced their thinking about how the economy should be run. And so the book is, just, like I said, just so thorough and detailed about how, like, the chronological events that relate to this shock therapy. So let me see, I think it starts in South America, and I believe it starts in South America, in like Argentina and Chile, and it just talks about how free market ideologues will take an opportunity to push through a lot of legislation and a lot of other stuff that adheres to their ideology very undemocratically when a country goes through economic crisis or war or famines or what have you. And those can be like purposefully made, or they can be opportunistic, and it just goes through these instances, from Argentina and Chile and those other South American countries up to Reagan and Thatcher in the 80s, and then further even into very, recent stuff with Iraq, as well as like climate change stuff and how that's affecting things. There's a lot of great reporting, a lot of firsthand accounts from people in other countries that are experiencing these changes, as well as like intellectuals and stuff. It's honestly a book that, politically speaking, is like, it's kind of life-changing, to be honest, with like all the information. And like I said, it's very thorough. I wouldn't say it's dry. It's written very well. It's, having those people interviewed has like a good emotional core to it, so you never feel like detached from anything that's really happening. There's always a human element that's really good for most readers, because most people don't, want to read really dry, like political, not theory, but political writings and economics and stuff like that. And so, yeah, I would definitely recommend this. I don't think it'd be something that I would recommend to a first-time reader if you don't like often read books that deal with these kinds of topics, just because there is so much information, and I think you need to have kind of a good amount of background knowledge on certain political ideas, like about capitalism, about socialism, about certain historical stuff that I didn't necessarily have going into this, and kind of, learned through reading. But yeah, this is an incredible book, and I would recommend it, that everyone should read it at some point in their lifetime. It's very long, but it's very, very good. So yeah, nothing but good stuff to say about the Shock Doctrine. Alrighty, and last but not least, this is Haruki Murakami with Hard-Boiled Wonderland and The End of the World. This is the only Murakami I've read. I didn't even know about him until an old book club that I was in. He popped up on it, and we read this book for the book club, which we have since disbanded, unfortunately, but hopefully maybe we can get that back together at some point. But yeah, this is a Japanese author translated to English. So it's not, I think it's not going to be 1-to-1, but the translator does a good job, I think, translating some of the ideas. Like, I guess I'll talk about the novel and I'll get into that. So the synopsis essentially is just that there's two parallel narratives. The odd chapters are in the hard-boiled wonderland, and the even chapters are in the end of the world. And so there's two parallel narratives that you're not sure how they connect until later in the novel. And so the way this ties back to what I was saying, but the way the translator decided to do this is that in the original Japanese, the author uses watashi, which is, I, and then boku, which is another way to say I, but a bit more like personal. So like each, the different narratives have different pronouns essentially for the first person pronoun. And because English doesn't, work that way, in this novel he switches between past and present tense, which is like it's not the same, but you kind of get different feelings when you're reading them. So yeah, this is kind of like cyberpunky, I guess you could say. It's magical realism, of course, so the world feels kind of realistic, except for some like certain magical elements. Like there's these underground kappas they're kind of prominent more in speech than in like appearance. Like they don't show up that much, but they talk about them a lot. And then the end of the world has like a very weird, like kind of creepy vibe about it. Very off. Something's definitely off there. And essentially what's happening is the narrator in the Hard-Boiled Wonderland he's working for a certain organization. Forgive me for not remembering the details because I haven't read it in a while. But he works for a certain organization. There's kind of a war going on between this organization and another, and it deals in like the mind, wiring the mind, and having people, I think it's like, I don't know if it's memory or thinking a certain way. And so he kind of gets caught up in this whole thing. And the end of the world is like about someone living in like kind of an idyllic, walled in little city or town, and having a job reading memories through like cow skulls. It's odd. It's very odd. It's very weird, but it's very, very good. And it's, yeah, I'm kind of at a loss because I haven't read it in a while, and I didn't prepare anything ahead of time. There's just a lot to say about it. And maybe I should reread it sometime. And I really need to read more of Murakami because I really enjoyed this one. But yeah, I would recommend this to just about anybody, as long as you can handle weird stuff. It's not like hard to follow, I would say, at all. It's pretty straightforward. There are some confusing concepts maybe at first with like the world that they live in, because it is different than ours because of that magical realist aspect. But otherwise, I wouldn't, as long as you're like a functional enough adult who's read like a fair amount of books, I think this is like a pretty normal read in terms of the difficulty level or what have you. So I think that's it. That's all I got to say about this book, and that's the last book I had to share. So thanks for watching if you made it through. I kind of plan to do more of these style of videos, just kind of talking about things that I pull off my shelves, books, music, movies, board games, anything I can think of that kind of interests me, and I feel like talking about it, and feel like I have something to say about it. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed, and maybe you'll stick around and see some more. I don't know. But yeah, until next time, have a good one.